Welcome to The Rundown. I'm your host, Nick Simonson, and we are celebrating summer. Here with the summer solstice just behind us, we're moving into that fun time of year when fish are on the feed. They're keying in on bait fish. They're keying in on those young of the year perch and panfish. And you're looking for those walleyes and those bass that are going to be smashing crankbaits and hitting everything aggressively. And that's what we'll be talking about today. How do we impart the action on stick baits or crankbaits that get these big fish to bite? And there's two primary ways of doing it. Number one, you can be the puppet master. You're the one who imparts the action on a lot of great models that are available today. And then number two, we'll talk about casting or trolling crankbaits in the depths and banging them off of structure, running them across a rocky bottom that sets an erratic motion in place that triggers a reaction bite from, say, a walleye, lurking in 10, 12, 15 feet. So walking through that, if you're working the shallows, particularly at dawn and dusk for feeding walleyes or maybe bass that are hungry, that are up there prior to those high light hours, and you're pulling stick baits, say like a Rapala X-Rap, the new Rip Stop, or maybe the classic Husky Jerk, when you're working on lures like that, you want to impart the action. You get to give it that dip, dart, pause, that erratic motion that sets off a trigger in game fish like walleyes and bass, where they think, hey, that's a wounded minnow, that's a wounded perch, that's a wounded bluegill, I'm on it, I'm going to go up and smash it. Anytime there's that sudden jerk with a pause, it looks a lot like a minnow that's dying in a water column, and the fish recognize it as an easy meal. So you have that opportunity by snapping your rod tip, pausing the bait, giving a couple quick jerks, and then seeing what happens to set off that instinctive trigger in walleyes and bass. Now the other option you have is when you're working with larger lip crankbaits or square lip crankbaits up in the shallows, you have the ability to bounce that crankbait off of structure. So when you're trolling, you're looking to hit a stretch from where it goes from gravel to chunk rock or boulders, and when that bait kind of careens off of those obstructions, same cue goes off. The fish say, wow, that was weird, or oh, look at that fish, he's in danger, or he's in trouble, or he's not feeling so well, I'm going to go up and make for my easy meal. So when you're trolling, you want to identify structure. Whether you're ripping it through, say, an old roadbed or a set of trees on a lake like Devil's Lake, or you're banging it off some rock, in a Canadian Shield Lake or a northern Minnesota lake. You want to be casting those crankbaits up in there and letting them do their thing against the structure, or you want to be trolling in an area where you know there's structure that's eventually going to make contact with the bait and sort of set it off on that erratic motion. So by focusing on these two areas, by imparting the action on your own, and you can do it with a big lipped crank or you can do it with a jerk bait, whatever the case might be, but imparting that action allows you to control what the fish see. You might see a bass, or maybe you know that walleyes are up in the shallows. You can target the fish that you're after and give them what they want to see. Otherwise, when you're trolling, you can crank it through those high percentage areas like trees, old shelter belts that have been flooded out, or maybe rock piles, and bouncing it off and getting that action to be imparted. Either way, it's good to have a crankbait retriever just in case you're in one of those areas where it's going to get hung up, so you can go back and get your crank or whatever the case might be in terms of preserving your offering. But again, you impart the action or let nature do the work. Runnings has all the crankbaits you're going to need for a great summer fishing, so stop on in, check it out in the sporting goods department, and their staff will be glad to help you out. That's the rundown for this week. We'll be in touch shortly. Good fishing.